The Great Dismal Swamp is a natural wonder, spanning 2 states and covering 600 square miles. It is beautiful, mysterious, and also deadly. Over the years, hundreds of people have entered the swamp, never to come out again. To this day, there are places where no human being has set foot, and other places where people wished they hadn't set foot.
I was up by the Great Dismal Swamp, and I was in one of the feeder ditches, and there was this beautiful Native American woman coming toward me, rowing ever so gracefully in a canoe. And I remembered it was the legend of the Lady in the Lake. I was glad I was fortunate enough to sit there and see it coming towards me. It was incredible. I'll never forget it.
They made her grave too cold and damp for a soul so warm and true. And now she's gone to the lake of the Dismal Swamp, where all night long, by a firefly lamp, she paddles her bark canoe. These words, penned 100 years ago by Thomas Moore, describe the most famous ghost of the Dismal Swamp, the Lady of the Lake. But she's just one of the many strange phenomena associated with this immense wilderness area.
One of the most famous stories from the Great Dismal Swamp is one that's been passed down as an Indian legend for hundreds of years. It's about a young maiden and a young brave who were to be married. Everyone was looking forward to this wedding because it was the perfect union. Before the wedding date, however, the young maiden became ill and she died. So when it came time for wedding day, the tribe instead had a funeral. The maiden was taken out near one of her favorite spots where she could overlook the lake of the Dismal Swamp. Later, the brave had fallen asleep, and in his dreams, she had come to him, calling to him from a tree that stood near the spot where she was buried. He didn't know what to make of this dream, so he ventured into the swamp to the spot where she lay. He fell asleep there, and again, she came to him in a dream, calling to him to come across the lake to be with her. He brought back a canoe, and he set out into the lake to try to find his bride. The young brave was never seen again. He did not return. But for the past 100 years, visitors to the swamp have seen the brave and his bride in a canoe paddling across the lake of the Dismal Swamp.
Here we are about to enter the Washington Ditch Trail. This will take us right into the Great Dismal Swamp. Most of the swamp is inaccessible by foot, but this is one of the prime locations to go ahead and enter the swamp, especially at night. The reason that we want to focus our investigation on Washington Ditch Trail is because of the numerous sightings of ghosts that have been reported in and around this area. I can definitely say it's very creepy out tonight, and I'm looking forward to getting out and actually seeing something. All right, what I want to do before we go ahead and start down the trail is I want to calibrate both of the devices I'm going to be using tonight. The first of the two is this is a standard off-the-shelf stud finder, and now if anything comes in close proximity to that, it's going to let me know. And ghosts, if ghostly apparitions actually do have some form to them, some density to them, this is going to be the tool that will pick that up. The other tool I'm using is a standard IR temperature gun. This way, if we think that there's something going on, maybe we hear something in the woods, or you just don't feel right, or maybe you feel a cold chill, we can go ahead and point this out into the woods, get a reading on it, and determine whether or not there's anything there. But before we actually step out in the woods, I'm going to calibrate it by getting a baseline reading. And the baseline reading I'm getting right now is about 61 degrees. (63), 63.4, 63.3, 64, 63.5, 64.2. Well, there's a possibility that there is something out there.
The Great Dismal Swamp has a rich legacy of ghostly legends, dating back hundreds of years and passed on through the generations. Are these just folklore, or are they true?
When I first came to the swamp 30-some years ago, it was still a privately owned piece of land before it became a national wildlife refuge. I had the opportunity to meet many of the old-timers here who had hunted and fished for many, many years. And they very often had a lot of interesting stories to tell about the swamp. One night, in the early evening, a good biologist friend of mine came up to my house, and he was obviously very agitated and worried, and he had just been down to the swamp on Washington Ditch. As he rounded the corner to the last little bit to get to the lake, he was rather astonished to see two people walking ahead of him toward the lake. He thought it was very strange because he hadn't passed any cars on the way, and he was coming up on them, of course, to tell them that it was not a good idea to be in here. He noticed that they were wearing very odd clothes, and he described the man as having a fishing pole. He said the other very strange thing was that the woman had a dress on, which he found very astonishing because women didn't usually go hiking in their dresses. As he drove up to tell them that they shouldn't be in there or to help them in any way he could, they vanished. As he was telling us this story, I remembered the legend of the fisherman who was lost in the swamp with his bride, and it sounded very much, the description that he gave was of these two people. The very interesting thing was that he never had heard that story or read about that legend in his life, so he had no idea that what he'd actually seen was actually ghosts from an old legend.
Years ago, there was a young lady that lived on the edge of the swamp. And on her wedding day, her groom-to-be had gone into the swamp to go fishing and bring back the meat for the table for that night after the wedding. It came time for the wedding, and the groom did not reappear. And they all became very worried about him. Well, still decked out in her wedding gown, she went into the swamp looking for her husband-to-be. Well, no one ever saw her again, or the groom. But to this day, fishermen who come into the swamp early in the morning will see a lady on the southern shore fishing, decked out in her bright white wedding gown. If they try to approach her by boat, she disappears into a white mist, and the mist hangs over the water.
It was early in the morning. I think it was around 4 a.m. I couldn't sleep that morning, so I just decided to jump into the boat and go down the swamp and throw a few lines in, see if I could catch something. Went out there, and there wasn't a soul in sight. Again, it was 4 in the morning, and I see this beautiful woman wearing a white dress. And believe it or not, she was fishing as well. Actually, it looked like a wedding dress. Again, there was no one around us, and I thought it was pretty weird of her being there in a white dress fishing. And she noticed me, she smiled. So, of course, I paddled a little ways past her, and I just happened to look back, and she was gone. Looked around a little bit to see if I can find out where she had went. No signs of movement or anything, and it really freaked me out. One minute she's there, the next minute she's gone. Never forget it.
Okay. New ambient temperature is 58 degrees. My stud finder went off. It was on number 2 there, indicating whatever it was fairly close if something did actually set it off. Set off meaning that there was something dense enough in front of it to trigger it. 62.2. Number 63 is the fluctuation range I'm going for right now. The needle is not pointing north. The needle is not pointing north. It means there's some kind of magnetic disturbance that is forcing it to go a different way than north. Usually that magnetic disturbance involves a ghost, something paranormal related. 62.9, that's within the range. With all the ghost sightings that have happened in this area and the numerous deaths, violent deaths, tragic deaths that have occurred in this area, it could be anything. It could be something trying to reach out to us. Some long-lost soul that wants to make contact with the living. Maybe they don't even know they're dead. You notice it came from back there, and then as we continued walking, I got no adverse readings. Get to this point, adverse reading. Either it's moving on, or it's staying just out of our range, trying to follow us.
After the break, a tale of French pirates killed in the swamp.
I was hunting in the Great Dismal Swamp for probably 2 or 3 hours when I started to hear some voices, noise, long way out. So I started hiking, getting out towards that area. Got over towards the point there, and I know I heard voices. And as I got closer to them, I knew it wasn't English, but as I got closer, I believe it was French, and it sounded like quite a few. So as I kept going towards that area, and I got to the area, and there was no one there. There was nobody, and the voices stopped. It was incredible, really.
It is said that early in the 19th century, a French pirate ship that had raided gold in the Caribbean was chased up to the eastern coast by the British. In order to evade them, they went up into the canals of the Great Dismal Swamp. When the British followed them up, they came to the ship, but there was no one left on board. They then went into the swamp to try to find the pirates, and they eventually located them. But the treasure and the gold was not to be found anywhere. The British soldiers killed all of the pirates, but it is said that several of them may have escaped into the swamp.
I'll lop your head off now. Where's my gold?
To this day, at dusk, if you listen carefully, you may be able to hear the pirates sitting around their campfire discussing their treasure, speaking in French. But the treasure has never been found.
I think I just heard something. It seemed to come from back where we just came from. What was that? Thought I heard something fall out of that tree or ruffled the tree leaves. Got something on there. Something on the stud finder. Oh wow, we're way off now. All right, the compass is now way off base. You're right there. I got a slight reading on the stud finder. The compass appears to be getting more and more off of north. Something is definitely out here. 59, 59.6. I want to go over this. I want to go over the... Something's got to be out here. I don't know if it's following us or what, but something has got to be out here. There's no telling what could be out here. 60.6. I can't say if it's something about this tree, or if something happened in this general area, or if this apparition is, in fact, just following us. Overall, I think we have experienced probably, at the very least, ghostly activity that wreaked havoc with the compass that we used and gave us some strange, generally out of the ordinary temperature readings, Why the apparition chose this night, this place, us, I can't say for sure. What it wants to do, what its methods are, I have no idea. But I can say that something was definitely here tonight.
The swamp is an undisturbed wilderness, a tangle of cypress trees and vines. It's an easy place to get lost in if you aren't careful. But there are also places in the swamp that appear and then disappear.
This is beautiful, sitting here reminiscing about that hike I took about a year ago. Got the hiking through and I saw this little cemetery in the middle of nowhere. So beautiful, so serene. I said to myself, my girlfriend would really like this. It was cemetery plots from the 1800s. So I looked around, I marked it on my GPS, I put it in my book. I took my bandana, I tied it up on the tree, and I knew I was coming back there. Grabbed my girlfriend. Next day, I was all excited. I knew she'd love this. She loves things like this. We looked around. There was nothing. I couldn't understand. I was shocked. Just yesterday, there was a headstone. There was a graveyard. There was a beautiful, serene cemetery here. I couldn't understand. I double-checked. I checked my GPS. I had the right grid coordinates. And I wanted to make sure, because this is nowhere to get stuck in the Dismal Swamp. I looked around. There was nothing there. I knew there was a cemetery. I knew there was a headstone. The only thing left was my bandana. So I knew I wasn't crazy, but I knew something had gone wrong. And I knew I had to get out of the Great Dismal Swamp. I didn't want both of us to be stuck there.
Travis McHenry has come to the swamp in search of another kind of creature. He's been tracking Bigfoot sightings in the swamp.
The area in and around the Great Dismal Swamp has been the location of several Bigfoot sightings over the past 20 years. We also found footprints, 2 separate footprints. One was a 15-inch track, which we found in the mud, and that was pretty apparently a Bigfoot track. 15 inches is about the average size. I had the liberty of being able to make a plaster cast of the footprint I found that day. This is a plastic recreation of that, and as you can see, I've drawn in the bones, reconstructed where the bones would be on the Bigfoot's foot. People usually find footprints that are 15 inches long, and that is commonly associated with Bigfoot activity. Based on the numerous footprints, eyewitness reports, and the sounds which I myself have heard, I am very confident that there is a Bigfoot creature or a group of Bigfoot creatures either living in the Dismal Swamp or using the Dismal Swamp as some kind of migration point.
The Great Dismal Swamp is a fierce, untamable wilderness that has withstood the attempts of humans to control it. It's a protected wilderness area, so it continues to grow wild, keeping its secrets safe inside the tangle of vines and brush that grow in its murky waters. Coming up next, the ghosts who haunt Hamilton's old customs house.